Hey everybody. So I thought I'd do a review today of The Reign of the Servant Kings by Joseph Dillow. I believe he actually goes by, the author goes by Jody Dillow now, but this is an older copy of this book. I believe there's actually he revised it, the author did, and the name is now changed to Final Destiny. Um, I'm doing a review of this book for a couple of reasons. Um, but chiefly because I think more than any other Christian book, apart from of course, obviously apart from the Bible, I think more than any other, this book here has had the most lasting and profound impact on my Christian walk. Um, uh, Before I read this book, I would say that I would have been in the camp of um, the type of person that was always questioning whether or not my salvation was truly genuine. Just to put it that way, I was not an Arminian. I was never either a Calvinist, more like somewhere in the middle, but probably Calvinist leaning. But again, never fully committed to either one. I uh, I believed in eternal security. However, I believe that a true Christian can never fall away. And therefore, the conundrum that comes from that is that, and the dilemma, is that you can never have assurance of salvation, because if you are always at risk of falling away, then your salvation was never genuine to begin with. And so I was always looking to my works and my actions to prove to myself the authenticity of my own redemption and salvation. So while I believed and have always believed and always will believe that salvation is by grace alone, through faith alone, in Christ alone, it was essentially, I believe, that my salvation was proven by works. However, once I read this book, uh, it changed my life profoundly, and I'm forever grateful to the author, Jody Dillow. And I don't think he'd ever see this, but if you ever did see it, I just want you to know that that this book, I can't state enough how much it's impacted me for the better. In fact, it's changed my life significantly. So, Jody, if you see this, thank you very, very much for writing this book, and all the time and effort you put into it. This is it's truly a treasure, and I cannot recommend enough that someone picks this book up and reads it. Uh, but anyway, enough of me. Uh, um, you know, prostrating myself here. The book itself, as it says here, is a study of eternal security and the final significance of man. Now, this copy, interestingly enough, I don't know actually. The my father was attended a small Bible college in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and his professor at the time was a man by the name of Glendon Riddle, or Glenn Riddle. And I believe that Glenn Riddle was actually friends with the author of this book, and so he got a copy. Either he purchased it or got it from Jody Dillow. But anyway, he gave it to my dad because they were using it as they took a course in this small Bible college through Hebrews. And this book was the textbook that they chose to go through. And so my dad had it for many years on his shelf, and it changed his thinking also very profoundly, to the such an extent that he, as well, it reshaped him and brought him over to the free grace camp. But anyway, he had this sitting on his shelf, and about I don't know, 2-3 years ago, was myself doing a personal study on the book of Hebrews. And my dad tells me, "Oh, you know what? I have a book. I have a book for you." And now, at the time, I was very, very heavy in the um, what would be called the Lordship Salvation camp, which is not that that's evil or wrong, or people that are in that movement are wrong. I don't believe that at all. I just believe that there's a better answer out there than that. So this isn't me hating on them. It's just my own personal beliefs and opinions. But anyway, my dad gave me this book, and I had no idea that this was really a free grace commentary. If I had known that, I probably would have thrown it in the trash. Not really, but not viewed it the same way. I simply thought it was a commentary on Hebrews, which, although he does address a lot of Hebrews in here because it is important to his argument, it's not a commentary on Hebrews per se. But at any rate, my dad gave it to me, and I was in the airport. They had recently moved, and I remember sitting in the airport, and I cracked it open, and it just was reading his first couple pages of his prologue, and it was it took me by storm. There's no other way to say it. I was very surprised. I had no idea what he was talking about, or I understood what he was talking about, but I had no idea where he was going. And it was one of those things that his logic and argumentation within this book about for eternal security, and primarily one idea, which is that there is a difference between entering the kingdom and inheriting the kingdom. And if you would like a fuller video on that, where we can discuss the nuances of this argument, I would love to do that. But for now, we're just going to do a review of this book. But anyway, I read this, and it, like I said, took me by storm and changed my thinking. In the introduction, he states, credits here in his acknowledgments, the reason why he wrote this book. And let's see here. He says, yes. He says, in 1973, the writer, that is Jody Dillow, was given a set of tapes by Zane Hodges on the book of Hebrews. Those lectures resulted in a change of perspective on that book and ultimately to a different way of looking at the New Testament. And I would like to thank Professor Hodges for the profound impact he has had on my understanding of the doctrines of eternal security and rewards. And reading that, I was aware of Zane Hodges' name. However, everything that I had heard was not good, to put it lightly. That is, the camp that I was in, it was all very negative about him. Now, I would like to clarify that I don't agree with everything that Zane Hodges ever taught. I probably don't agree with everything Jody Dillow teaches or taught. However, I definitely think that that does not mean that everything they did is evil, or that there isn't value that we couldn't take from reading their materials. And there is a lot that I have learned and taken away from Zane Hodges as well. And this, like I said, this book really opened up a world to me, the world of free grace, and I'm profoundly grateful to the author and then also Zane Hodges as well. But the book itself, like I said, isn't necessarily a commentary on Hebrews, although he does address it, but it's a deep dissection and criticism of both Arminian theology and Calvinism. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with another writing. Dave Hunt wrote a book some years ago titled What Love Is This? And it was also a critique of Calvinism. Although that book had some good arguments, I found it somewhat lacking as far as he tended to do something called ad hominem attacks, where he would attack Calvin and Augustine based upon who they were as people, rather than necessarily addressing their ideas. He did address them, but I felt a little thrown off by that. This book, however, he does an excellent job of not I don't even believe he goes after Calvin or Augustine for their ideas or for who their personalities and who they were as people, but rather just addresses their ideas. And in my mind, that is the most convincing argument, the argument that's made depending on where you simply weigh someone's opinions and teachings and let them stand on their own, rather than letting the person behind them that taught them cloud your vision with bias. Because I may not like, let's say I don't, which I don't really have an opinion on this, but let's say I didn't like, Calvin. Let's just choose him. Let's say I didn't like Calvin, and therefore I would say all of Calvin's teachings are wrong. Calvin did nothing good, which would not be true. I'm sure Calvin did many good things. And of course, we're all fallen creatures who all sin. So, but anyway, I'd like to judge their merits or what they've taught and done by the teachings themselves, rather than judging it by the people. And so that's what Jody Dillow has done, where this book really is an exhaustive treatise, an argument for the free grace position. I mean, look at this small print, and this volume is quite thick. And it really, let me see, his bibliography is in, this is the author himself. Back when this book was published, I believe this work here, this book has to be from the, it has to be from the 80s or 90s. But anyway, the his bibliography here is extensive. Each page is loaded with cross references and footnotes. But it's over, let's see here, 600 pages long with, in very small print. But it was really chapter by chapter. He dismantles, takes each argument and dismantles it, or explains why he believes that they are insufficient. That is, the arguments that are against free grace. And really, I came away from this having a complete assurance of salvation like I've never had before, which is, oddly enough, is something that my brother once asked me. I was teaching him through the Bible, and he was raised in a Christian home, and at the time I was trying to influence him more towards the Lordship Salvation camp. And I remember telling him, you have you surrendered your life to Christ? Have you done this? Have you done that? Are you, going to church? Are you tithing? Are you doing all these things? Which, make no mistake, I have no problem with those things, and those are very necessary in order to have fellowship with Christ and to walk in obedience with Him. However, I was unknowingly, I was front-loading the gospel. And anyway, I remember telling my brother all this: you got to do this, 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 this. Have you done that? You might not be a Christian. And then he asked me, he just simply said, well, John, is it true that we're saved by grace? And I said, yes, absolutely. And he goes, well, how could it be we'd be saved by grace, and yet how could it be saved by grace and yet it costs us everything? In other words, that all these things that we have to do in order to maintain that salvation, whether you're Arminian, it would be to maintain it, or Calvinistic, to prove it. And that hit me hard. I remember at the moment I didn't have an answer for him. And I don't think you can have an answer for him. And I don't believe that someone who is in either of those Arminian or Calvinistic camps, I don't believe that they could ever fully have assurance, or at least lasting assurance, because I think that both those systems are eventually founded upon works, whether intentional or not. Both front-loading and back-loading the gospel is something that's destructive of all assurance. And it wasn't until I, like I said, read this book and I came to that, it was my entire perspective was shifted. Again, I am profoundly grateful to the author of this. And again, if you see this, Jody, Dillow, just know that I can't thank you enough for what you've done. On the back here, there's some commentary, some notes by different authors. We have Charles Ryrie, who is recently late, within several years, the president of Dallas Theological Seminary. And he says, in this penetrating critique of Westminster Calvinism, Dr. Dillow has given us a comprehensive discussion of eternal security and rewards by a constant appeal to Scripture. The biblical doctrine of eternal security is supported instead of the Reformed doctrine of perseverance. This scholarly and well-written book should be read by all pastors and students of the Word who are interested in the doctrines of grace. Then you also have Earl D. Rodmacher. He was another famous free grace theologian. And here he says, here at last, for over 25 years, I've been waiting for a book that would present a biblical recognition of the doctrine of rewards as it relates to the full orb teaching of salvation. This book does it, and does it beautifully. Dr. Dillow's Reign of the Servant Kings may well be the most significant contribution towards resolving the several hundred-year debate between Calvinism and Arminianism. And there's other ones here. There's one that's put in here by just a simple a lady, and I'm just going to read it because it's really how I felt. It says, I finished this book sitting on my front porch at dawn this morning. I cried a long time. It wasn't the first time I cried while reading it, and it's not that the book is depressing, nor should its validity be gauged by how much emotional response it generates. It is that I've been deeply moved, profoundly changed forever by reading it. So many haunting discrepancies in doctrine were cleared up. but the impact is not primarily intellectual. And I must say that truly is how I felt. That many questions and things that I had going around in my mind for a long time had been answered by this book. So, once again, I cannot recommend you get this book enough. The Reign of the Serpent Kings, or the newer copy would be Final Destiny. And I highly, highly recommend you get this book. It's well worth reading to fully understand. Even if you don't agree with him, it's still useful to at least understand his opinion. And again, I don't agree with everything that's in this book. However, that doesn't mean that we can't learn from it. So anyway, God bless, and I'll talk to you later.